Alright everybody, welcome to our new lesson for today. So we will talk about the always exciting topic of Escherichia coli subtypes, particularly enteroinvasive and enteroaggressive E. coli. So our lesson's objective for today is to determine their general bacterial characteristics, disease-associated, and laboratory diagnosis. But before we jump to the two subtypes, I'm going to give you some short background about the E. coli bacteria. Kaya, let's go! What is Escherichia coli? It is also known as E. coli, that is very common bacteria in gastrointestinal tract and part of the normal bacterial flora. However, some E. coli strains are able to produce a toxin that could produce serious infection. The main reservoir of such E. coli strains is the gas-feeding animals, particularly the cattle. Their meat might become contaminated by fecal matter due to the poor processing method during slaughter, and their fecal might end up contaminating other foods such as milk, vegetables, and water. Additional information about Escherichia coli is that they are facultative since they can survive in the presence or absence of oxygen. They are gram-negative and rod-shaped bacteria that commonly found in animal feces, lower intestines of mammals, and even on the edge of the hot springs. They grow best at 37 degrees Celsius, and they are bacteria that cannot suppurate, so therefore it is easy to eradicate by simply boiling or basic sterilization. E. coli can cause several intestinal or extraintestinal infections such as urinary tract infection and mastitis. However, E. coli are not always harmful to human bodies or other animals. Most E. coli lives in our intestines, where they help our body break down the food we eat as well as assist with waste processing, vitamin K production, and food absorption. Now that you already have a small background about the E. coli bacteria, let's proceed to the first subtype, which is the enteroaggressive bacteria. Enteroaggressive Escherichia coli, its general characteristic as a bacteria is that it is a type of diarrheagenic E. coli that is found attached in the epithelial cell, typically in human epithelial type 2 cell or the HEP2 cells that originate from the laryngeal carcinoma. The EIEC appears to be aggregate in a stacked brick pattern by an aggregative adhesion fibrae. This slab brick pattern, also known as honeycomb formation, is a distinctive feature of EIEC among other diarrheagenic E. coli, which emerge because of the bacterium-to-bacterium and bacterium-to-cell interaction. So this subtype of E. coli has virulent factor. First one is aggregative adhesion fibrae, or the AAF. It is the principal virulence factor of enteroaggressive E. coli. It plays a role in epithelial cell adhesion, which is the first step of intestinal colonization. The fibrae is spread out by the bacteria because of the dispersant surface protein that is produced by the EIEC. The dispersant facilitates in overcoming the electrostatic attraction between the AAF and the bacterial lipopolysaccharide layers. Other than that, this is also mediates in bacterial penetration to intestinal mucous layer. With the help of the dispersant, the fibrate can tightly attach to the HEP2 cells, or the epithelial type 2 cell. Biofilm formation right after the adhesion of bacteria to the epithelial cells, the EIEC will generate a mucus containing biofilm that plays a role in allowing the EIEC to avoid or elude the local immune system and inhibit the antibacterial factor transportation. In terms of pathogenicity islands, EAEC has been identified to produce bacterial toxins which are destructive to the intestinal villi and enterocytes. The Shigella species pathogenicity island has been detected in EAEC that encodes the plasmid-encoded toxin, or the PET, that sticks sprintin in epithelial cytoskeleton for deformation and exfoliation of the cell. Serine protease autotransportation of Enterobacteriaceae, a cytotoxic to epithelial cell, and Shigella enterotoxin 1 associated with increase in fluid secretion. Intraintestinal E. coli strains and Yersinia pathogenicity island have always been detected to EAEC. Enteroaggressive Escherichia coli mode of transmission is oral to fecal route and food and water that is contaminated with the EAEC. What are the diseases associated with the enteroaggressive Escherichia coli? So basically, it is known to cause the persistent diarrhea that usually occurs in infants and children. It is typically characterized by watery diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, abdominal pain, dehydration, and low-grade fever. The stool typically does not have the presence of white blood cells and red blood cells. It is classified that EAEC is not a strain of E. coli that causes bloody stools. Other than that, it may also cause anorexia, and there are cases wherein EAEC have been associated with growth retardation in some children in the developing countries. Also, some cases have shown that EAEC is isolated in HIV patient and thought to be cause of HIV-related diarrhea, making it an opportunistic pathogen. Also, the STEC, or the O100H4 that cause hemorrhagic colitis and hemolytic uremic syndrome, or the HOAs outbreak in Europe and Germany have been found to have an EAEC genes. In terms of laboratory diagnosis, enteroaggressive Escherichia coli, as of this day, the gold standard of the detection of EAEC is still the HEP2 cell assay, or the HEP2 cell adherence test. But in this test requires long period of time and special facilities is needed, since this bacteria is very much prone to contamination. There are convenient tests such as quantitative biofilm assay, since EAEC could produce biofilm in polystyrene surface. It would be easy to visualize through a 0.5% crystal violet of GEMSA. Also, it can be detected by the multiplex polymerase chain reaction as a confirmatory method. Another subtype of Escherichia coli is the interinvasive Escherichia coli. They are biochemically, genetically, and pathogenically closely related to Shigella species, but this strain of E. coli does not produce Shigella toxin. It is called as invasive since they can penetrate and multiply with epithelial cells, also have the capacity to invade interstitial epithelial cells in vivo and penetrate HELE cells in tissue culture. They are gram-negative bacilli, non-motile, facultative aerobic, and generally non-lactose fermenter. They attack and invade epithelial cell of the colon, leading to destruction of the intestinal mucosa. This strain of E. coli is rare in US but is common in countries with poor general hygiene. Cases are sporadic but can cause large outbreak. Children and adults are at risk with this strain of E. coli. Its mode of transmission is person to person via fecal-oral route, ingestion of contaminated water and food also. Since this type of strain can invade intestinal mucosa, this leads to watery diarrhea. Its symptoms can be fever, severe abdominal cramps, malaise, and frequent defecation of watery stool. It can also cause dysentery or a diarrhea with mucus and blood in stool. It can also cause enteritis, inflammation, and ulceration of the mucosa by the epithelial invasion of the large bowel. Also, it can cause a disease such as traveler's diarrhea. In terms of laboratory diagnosis, enteroinvasive E. coli can be detected by stool examination, tissue culture for observation of direct invasiveness of enteroinvasive E. coli. It can be detected by DNA probe for bacterial molecular characterization and differentiation of EIEC from Shigella species. PCR tests most used due to affordability and rapid result are FLP analysis, pulse field electrophoresis, and ribotyping. That's all for today's lesson. Thank you for watching and I hope you learned something. God bless.